right, now to give an example of this absence of the inclusion of private debt in economic analysis, let's look at the UK for a second, because the UK was recently revealed to have close to 1,000% of their GDP in debt. 600% of that is in the banking sector, or otherwise you could private debt. That's private debt, the banking sector debt. But talk about the UK for a second. Is that correct that pretty much people omit that private debt and it should be included, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, the whole idea that you can try to model capitalism without including money and debt in your models, and that's 99.9% of neoclassical models include neither money nor debt, is a bit like trying to model how a bird flies by assuming that it doesn't have wings. It's just ridiculous that it's left out. And they do it from a piece of classical, neoclassical a priori logic. They start by saying, oh, well, debt is simply a person saving money, lending to a person who's borrowing money. So when the lender saves, his spending power goes down. When the borrower borrows, his spending power goes up. The two cancel each other out. Overall, there's no macroeconomic impact. That is totally ignorant of the way in which money is created in the modern financial sector, which is simply debts create money, banks create money by creating debt. No saver has to go without for a debt to be created. That's just a myth from asinine, half-baked neoclassical thinking about the economy in the absence of any knowledge of the actual empirical reality of the economy. So what actually happens in the real world is rising debt, which is endogenously expanded by the banking sector, finances expenditure, and if that expenditure is on new investments, new factories, innovation, that's good. That's what I call Schumpeterian debt, which is good stuff. But when it finances gambling on rising asset prices, that's what Minsky called Ponzi finance, and that's disastrous. Now, of course, there will be a limit to how much money you'll borrow for an investment, because you are going to be basing your expectations of whether it's worth getting into that debt on what you expect to make in profit in the future out of genuinely selling new widgets to people. So you've got to make some sort of estimation of what you think you can make an income out of that. But if you believe you're going to get money by selling an asset on a rising market, you'll borrow to the bloody hills. And that's what actually has happened. And the banking sector happily finances that. Now, I am totally gobsmacked that that figure that you've quoted to me is correct. I've seen figures saying it's 450% of GDP, the financial sector's debt. 600% is just, I'm stunned, because America's crisis began with a level of financial sector debt of 120% of GDP. So we're talking a level of debt that's 4, possibly even 5 times as high as the level that caused the catastrophe in the United States. When the hits the fan in England, it's going to be some pretty serious.
Yeah. Yes, well, I mean, it makes sense, though, when you consider, now we know, when you take on board all the machinations of the MF Global scandal, because of the loophole in the regulatory environment of the UK, which allowed for infinite rehypothecation, with no limits whatsoever on rehypothecation. And it's the ground zero for the MF Global scandal, Lehman Brothers, Bernie Madoff, as well as a couple of other these major league scandals. All of that debt that was used to finance all those scandals are on the balance sheet of these UK banks, which of course we know from experience is going to end up on the balance sheet of the government, and the government is going to then impose further austerity measures to pay off this debt.